Jack here, JBF Music and Guitar Lessons. I'm back with one of these critique things for you. It's sort of like an informal analysis where I'll pause the video, talk about stuff that's going on and try to deconstruct the performance, demystify it hopefully just a little bit. If you like this, let me know with the like, the comment and the subscribe, enable all notifications. I'm sure you guys know the drill. Equally, if you don't like it, feel more than free to hit the dislike, but if you can tell me specifically what you don't like, I can take on board and try and adjust these as I go on with them. If you just want to watch the original video or kind of watch someone sitting slack-jawed and not comment on it, this probably isn't for you. I'm going to pause it, I'm going to talk about stuff that's going on here. I'm putting together a lesson of some Jimi Hendrix signature guitar licks, which you can get with the eye up there, and this is essentially me documenting part of the process that I go through for finding things that he does a lot or licks that would be really good to look at. So as you've probably gathered from that, the guitarist in question here is Jimi Hendrix. I think this is a live rendition of Voodoo Child, so far too much talking on my part. Let's listen to the been dubbed the patron saint of guitar by one of my old guitar cheers. A comment I think I agree with. I don't know about you guys. Well, let's go for it. Okay, there's two things spring to mind immediately here. One is that this has been colorized quite nicely. It's a little bit grainy, but a lot of the kind of older footage hasn't aged so well. I don't know what they have to do. Someone who knows more about film could explain it better than me, but to make it look sort of more modern. The other thing he's doing here is he's using a wah-wah pedal. If you want a bit more information on that, you can click the eye up there. But essentially it gets that kind of scratchy funk sound that most of us know. If you look under his left foot, it's moving up and down, it's operating the wah. So when it's pushed to the floor, it's going to have a higher scratchy trebly sound, and when it's kind of pulled up, it's going to have a kind of lower bassy timbre. So you can probably see there his foot's on the pedal. He's kind of moving it on the beat. So basically on the 1, 2, 3, 4, he's going to be pushing the pedal down. In fact, I'm probably going to have to do this as one of the signature licks. I'm not going to talk too much about the technical aspects of the intro lick, but I will put it in the signature licks video I mentioned. And just a final thing before we go back to it here, he's playing notes now, but before he was getting this really rhythmic sound. And what you do there is you just mute the strings, you rest your hand really lightly over them, and instead of getting like a note, you just get this kind of type sound. He's just so cool, isn't he? What you might have noticed there when the kind of band kicks in, sorry, I'm just taking a moment to, it looks so awesome. When the band kicked in, the sound kind of changes and gets a bit heavier. There'll probably be another clip of it, or you can pop the video back, but next to his wah is this kind of circular looking thing. It looks a bit like a landmine. It's a pedal called a fuzz face, because it looks like a wee face on the top, and it adds this fuzzy sound, so when he gets this big kind of sound going on, that's what he's done. I've actually done that riff with a tab and half speed, so if you want to learn that, you can check out the eye up there. Let's get back to this though. So that's him using the wah pedal to sweep through the frequencies and get that trebly thing. If you've ever wondered what sound that is, that's how he's doing it. I do have to say, and you can hate me in the comments for this if you want, but if you go to like, I mean, this must have been about 50 years ago. If you go to like a local pub or club and a gig, there'll probably be a guy playing there that is as competent in terms of like technical ability as Hendrix, but there's something about the aura of the original, or even if it's in kind of video form like this, if hearing him play his songs and kind of seeing them do it, that just makes it a little bit more special. And I suppose the thing is as well that he really pioneered this type of playing. Like all of us as guitarists, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. Like I would never have come up with any of these ideas myself. The reason you can kind of come up with stuff and learn it is because there's been greats like Hendrix before who've really just kind of, trailblazers, they've set the way. It's a really strong blues influence coming across there, where he's singing a line and then he's doing almost like a kind of call and response. So he sings, then plays a bit on a guitar, like a kind of lead fill. Something like B.B. King, he's a great example of that kind of blues type of playing. Okay, you might be wondering why on earth is he singing into this big foam thing, and I suspect it's to prevent a thing called mic sizzle, right? There's one reason for having these is it kind of acts as a sort of pop shield, so you get like noises like sibilance noises, things that have S's, or what you call plosives, which are things that are like P's and B's, and they both kind of produce nasty frequencies, like again, it's sounded like a so they can help produce that, but the mic sizzle thing that I mentioned is depending how things are wired up electronically, the mic, the tip of it, if it's I'll take this off, there's a metal bit underneath it, right? That, hopefully that didn't peak. That can be active in the electronics, so if you get too close to it with your lips, you can get a little bit of an electric shock. Or if the wiring's bad, it could blow you, blow your face off. So I suspect why they've put that there is to stop that happening. It might be because it's outside, so they're worried about rain getting in it and that kind of thing as well. But I doubt this is an aesthetic choice on Jimmy's part. I think it's probably health and safety, and they'll probably be doing the right thing in this case. So there's another cool effect going over the top that's like a kind of I suspect, I could be wrong here, so please correct me if I am, this is probably a univibe or some sort of phaser. So it's maybe a wee bit, it sounds a little bit like a wah, but it's more of what you'd call a modulation effect, so it takes the kind of pitch and it modulates, moving it up and down a tiny bit at a time. So that almost like kind of Dalek UFO Space Invader type noise. It could be a few things. It might be a delay pedal, or what you might have managed to do with this foot is move up the rate of the modulation, which I think is a univibe he's using. So the rate is how quick it happens. So if it's slow, you hear that kind of like if it's quick, you get that really fast kind of stuttery thing going on. I suspect that's what he's doing there. It took me a long time before I appreciated the fuzz tone, but this is a great example of why you can get this kind of like really smooth but also dirty sounding guitar tone. This being a kind of hippie type festival as well, and the noises themselves from someone who's completely sober are pretty spectacular. I cannot imagine the range of emotions and trips that the audience must be going through, and probably Jimmy himself by the looks of it. So I might have been mistaken about the univibe. It looks like he had another kind of pedal that you'd operate up and down. So I don't know if it's a secondary wah or something. I'll have to look into that. As well with the type of crowd this is and the type of festival it is and the type of music, you can really get away with these extended jam sections, which a lot of music doesn't really permit that anymore. I don't know whether it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. As an observation, that you wouldn't really get that within music that's in kind of any, let's say, a kind of popular. I don't even want to say mainstream, because even things like kind of metal and rock tend to be a bit more rigid these days as well. Not always, but 9 times out of 10. A complaint I do have here is I think the cameraman spent a bit too much time in the audience. I'd quite like to see Jimmy's fingers and to see his expressions and what's going on at his end of things, but what can you do, eh? So just a quick comment on the rhythm section here. They're holding it together, but there's a definite slackness to it. They're not, which I suspect is probably a result of whatever substances they've taken. Again, like I'd say, like bands you see these days, if you go to your local kind of pub or club, if you're living in a somewhat musical city, a lot of bands you see will just be really tight and really gelled. These guys are really quite loose with it, which comes with the territory of it being a bit of a jam band. So they're maybe not locked in the same way we've come to expect performances to be now. It's maybe more akin to kind of your stoner rock bands or stuff like that. They tend to play in a lot more kind of loose style as well. So there, he's gone into a total different tangent. He's going for like an almost kind of funky thing, a bit like how we talked before, doing those kind of scratches. And you can see him, he's looking around at his band because he's kind of signaled to them, I'm going for like a slightly funkier, quieter dynamics. I think the drummer's kind of catching on, so it'll be interesting to see if they play off each other a bit here. I couldn't make out a word of that, but he looks like he's having a ball. What's cool here is if you listen to the bass, so it's much lower, he's kind of doubling the line. Jimmy's doing that bam, bam, bam. So dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. He's doubling that up, so I suspect because Jimmy's turned around and looked at them, they're maybe going to wrap up the song, because that's a nice way to kind of do it. Start doubling the same part. Maybe the drums might kind of play in unison with that as well. Okay, so I'm going to give myself a half mark for that. They've gone into a different unison riff, that dun 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 dun. You could hear the drums were accenting, so that means kind of playing on those beats, the dun 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 dun. But it was a different riff from the one they were playing before, so half marks, I think. I mean, I really enjoyed that. It's Jimi Hendrix, what can you say? And just imagine how loud, ear-bleedingly it must have been with that wall of Marshalls he's got there. Of course, this was back in the day when the amps weren't as powerful, so you would have to have them all turned on. Nowadays, you might have one amp turned on and the rest are off, or some bands just put out cardboard cutouts, which I'm not too sure how I feel about that. You can go the Rush route and just have like random objects like washing machines on stage. I think that's a bit of a better option. Cool, so now I'm going to break down some of the kind of key concepts or things that really stuck out at me from that performance. Okay, so the first thing I want to touch on here is those kind of scratches. So I've got my wah under my foot, apologies for being off the camera, but basically I'm just going to move it down like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can probably hear it kind of popping a wee bit in the speaker there. So if I just play a chord and do that, you can hear that kind of wow wow thing going on. And the same idea applies if you're doing the scratches. So even if you're just doing something simple like 1 add 2 add 3 add 4 add, we bring the wah down on every beat. So on the 1 and the 2 3 4 1 add 2 3 4 add, right? So if I keep the same pattern where I'm going down on the 1, down on the 2, down on the 3, down on the 4 with the wah, and I start doing 16th notes, so 1 yada, 2 yada, 3 yada, 4 yada, you get a kind of funkier thing again. And the more you do this sort of thing, the more you get comfortable with it. You can do what's called syncopation. So you're playing like a groove or kind of a rhythmic line that isn't as on the beat. It's not a steady 1, 2, 3, 4. It kind of drops out beat. It sounds a bit more funky basically. So you kind of have, you know, that kind of thing. And if you do it without the wah, you can still get that kind of cool, scratchy, progressive sound. But with the wah, it just adds this little extra special sauce. And of course, if you go on the bridge pickup, you'll get more of a kind of twangy steel sound. The way Jimi Hendrix does is his sound starts to go into the rhythm as well. So there's loads of applications you can use the wah for to just like add a little bit, kind of secret sauce on the top of something. So another example would be when he does that bend. So you just sustain the bend and move your wah pedal up and down to get that kind of wah effect. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is fuzz. I've really kind of dialed in an over the top, some would say obscene amount of fuzz, but it's just so I can highlight the things you can do with fuzz that make it quite so fun. So you could probably hear the wah coming in over the top there, and you get this kind of really kind of smooth, almost glitchy, very harmonic, rich sound with fuzz. If you use your neck pickup, you'll get a smoother tone again. There's some other cool sounds you can get as well, and they usually involve playing with a tone pot. So let's go back to the bridge pickup. If I got my tone up full, it's got quite a lot of high end in it. If I put the tone all the way down, you get a much more muffled type of sound. There's usually a sweet spot on this guitar. It's about 3 or 4. So you roll the tone in and you start to hear a little bit more of the high end, a bit more kind of harmonic content. Just about there. So you can probably hear there's kind of more overtones and that kind of thing. And if I go in this position here, so the middle and the bridge together, got the bridge, the middle roll down to about 2.5. The tones are about 4 for the bridge pickup. So you can hear this as kind of cool, like overtoned harmonic content. And similar to the tone pot, if you kind of swoop your wah forward, you'll probably find a kind of sweet spot for where the harmonics really start to come through. So I'm just moving it slowly forward, so somewhere around here. So there, that's just a case of slowly pushing my wah forward till I kind of hear the harmonics. It's going to be different for every pedal, it's going to be different for every guitar. Or extra frequency, so sort of there. But you just play a note and you keep rocking it forward. So you start to hear almost like a different frequency on top, or things start to sound a bit glitchy. You can always use the wah like we did before, or in a really rhythmic way. So let's just go 1, 2, 3, 4, pushing it down to the floor again, right? want to see more of this kind of thing, let me know in the comments. Hit subscribe to keep up to date with the channel. You can check out the Hendrix licks with that video there. Yeah, take it easy, guys. Have a good one.